Hello. Thanks for dropping in. I've been looking back, and there have been two people who've been asking me questions, or have asked me questions, about hide and seek. One is Robin Harbron, and I'm just looking back, and he asked me, well, it was about a year ago. I was like, oh yeah, I got to get a special backdrop together. Well, it took longer than I had thought it would. But I think we're done. Anyway, here is some of the things that he asked me. Online, I've seen claims that Hide and Seek was released anywhere from 1977 to 1986. The actual movie credits appear to say 1983, though it's hard to make out the small print on my VHS copy. Because of the range of release dates, some people claim Hide and Seek was released before the famous War Games, which came out June the 3rd, 1983, while others say Hide and Seek is a ripoff of War Games. I'm curious if you were aware of War Games while you were working on the movie. Do you remember when it was filmed? Was it during the school year or a break? Okay, well, I know that it was filmed in 1983, and it started, I don't remember exactly when, but it was during the school year, but near the end of the school year. And then bits and pieces, or as I say, pickup shots, were done even after, I think, into the summer a little bit. So definitely 1983. Now, I do not remember being aware of War Games at the time. I don't. I know I saw War Games, and it was interesting. There were certain things in there I was like, oh yeah, sure. Take a pop tab, diddle around inside a phone, and it'll ring. But all productions have their artistic license about what makes things happen and what makes things doesn't. Anyway, and just like in this movie, there were things that were okay, other things that were a bit of a stretch. Anyway, I do not remember being aware of War Games. I don't remember of anybody speaking of, oh yeah, we're making a thing like War Games, or yeah, War Games is out. But obviously, if War Games came out in June of 1983, then it did come out first because, post production takes a while. So I would say they were of a similar time. Now the this movie was based on a book called The Adolescence of P1, and I think that might have been written in 1977 or come out in 87. I'll have to look that up. Good question. Let us see what else we have. I'm curious. How did you get involved in hide and seek? Well, I may have answered this already. I may not. Basically, I was sitting in one of the computer rooms at Northern Secondary School, and then there was kind of this miniature commotion of people coming in, and I remember there was this fellow who was obviously French. I think he had a beret on, and he was doing things. And there's a scene in the movie where a hacker covers up the window, and he was taking things and covering up the window and doing it. I wasn't paying much attention. I was working on something. I don't know what. And my teacher was there, and I don't remember if this was during class or after school, or probably just during class. Anyway, so there were 3 or 4 people scampering about. I guess they were, looking back, it was the director and other people involved in locations and things and scouting and stuff, because they're trying to pick their spots. And from what I know, they just went over to the teacher and said, hey, do you think you know anybody who could help us with this? And he pointed them to me, and they handed me this thing, and I looked at the script, and I said, can you do something like that? And I looked at it, and it was basically just having stuff come out on the screen. And being heavily involved in modems and bulletin boards at the time, I knew, what stuff typically looked like at roughly 300 baud. So I did a quick something, which probably involved um, well, the basics of what I think I did all along, where I would have the data that was supposed to just come out on the screen, like it was coming over a modem. It would print, one character at a time with a slight time delay in between, and and the things that people were supposed to type in would, of course, already be waiting there, waiting for them to hit a key, and regardless of what key they hit, the right thing would come up. Although occasionally, in the midst of that, I did in the data put in things that looked like people were making corrections. I did. Anyway, so I did something quick, and I said, you mean something like this, and suddenly, poof, I was hired. Um, and this, okay, yeah, the majority of all the school stuff in this movie was filmed at Northern Secondary School. That's in Toronto. In the movie, you're credited as a computer consultant along with Chris Conroy. Did you work together? Do you know what Chris went on to do? Actually, funny thing is apparently Chris was something at the University of Waterloo, which of course is where the Super Pet was made and is like the place. Um, I'm trying to think. I might have met him once, but I seem to remember when they were first in the room and I first got hired, they basically said, they'd had this script with somebody for about a year and not much had come out of it. And anyway, I have no idea what he went on to do. I just Googled him earlier today to see if I could figure that out. I have no clue. No clue at all. And maybe we met once, but it wasn't, I think it was just in passing, sort of. And when I do the descriptions of the scenes, I can tell you more of, what he did. But this is a case, and I've had this happen a number of times, where some people get wrapped up on certain things that don't really make any difference. For example, um, to write the kind of programs that I did and that he did and such, you don't need to be a mathematical genius. You need to know the computer. And I find it goes back to a long time of certain companies, like printing press companies. They would donate printing presses to schools, so that then, as people graduated, they had experience on this kind of press. And then, of course, companies would say, well, we better buy that press because everybody knows how to use them. So my deep knowledge of the PET and the Commodore 64 is what made it possible for me to do what I did for them as well as I did, and make it so that I could quickly adapt and make changes to timing and other such things. I'm sure Chris was quite brilliant, and he did do the stuff on the Commodore 64 that looked like the reactors were going to explode and all that. Um, anyway, more about that as we get into it. So basically, it was a case of, um, regardless that I was in high school and he was in university or did something at the university, um, I think they chose wisely when they picked me, who knew the machines. Sort of like walking in, like I helped on another movie called How to Deal years later, and it was being shot mostly at this church I was helping at, and see, I knew the church. It didn't matter that I was not the rector or the associate priest or whatever. It didn't matter that I was like godlike. I knew the building. I knew where things were. I knew where circuit breakers were, circuit breakers. I knew, all the idiosyncrasies of the building. And so, if they had just picked someone at random to mind the building, it wouldn't have gone as well, because you have this just this knowledge of, okay, you popped a breaker, I know what that is. We can do this, we can't do this, and da da da. Like there, for example, there was um, sometimes they wanted to move pews. But I said that's fine, you can do that. But they were screwed to the floor. I said you got to put them back where they came from, and you can't drill any holes into the floor. You got to make sure that if you take out 2 or 3 pews, they go back in the same place, and the screws go back in the same place because there's radiant heating in the floor. And if you start drilling, you're going to poke it, and that's going to be bad. Anyway, let's look more questions. Do I know what Chris went on to do? No clue. Presumably, there were several PET and Commodore 64 programs written for this movie. Is that what you and Chris worked on? Yes, primarily I worked on the PET, and he did the 64 things that were seen at the power plant. Everything at the school, though, was mine, and there was the scene, as you'll see, when Jessica is called up to the front and saying, oh, well, here's the, here, come up to the main thing here and show us what you can do, as Huntley was trying to show her up. That was done in the Commodore 64, and mostly that was done in the Commodore 64 because, it gave the illusion of, here we have the main thing, and it's on a big monitor, and everybody can see, and that was not really, it might have been possible, but it was certainly a lot easier using a Commodore 64. So yeah, everything that really showed P1 or anything to do with P1 was either done on the PET or the Commodore 64. In other scenes, you will see, like in the doctor's office, you'll see there's a terminal thing in the side or in the corner, and I'm trying to think of other things. Oh, well, of course, a pizza, there's the printer, there's the thing, it's all, yes. Okay, so, who was responsible for what? I think I said that. Was everything written in BASIC, or did you use other languages or techniques? Well, everything I wrote was in BASIC. I believe everything he did as well, but I don't know because I never had access to it. I never looked at it. And certainly there were some things in that he did that I would have altered to make things look more the same in the varying scenes. So I don't know. Let me see. Was this an actual paid job for you? Yes, it was. Looking back on it, now this was a different time and a different era and all of that. They paid me the grand sum of $700. And that, I suspect, was a great bargain for them, because at some point I did get a call and I had to go down to the Toronto Star, and they did an article and basically said, this whole production is resting on the shoulders of this kid. And somewhere there's an article that I've been looking for, but I can't find, that shows me with my motorcycle helmet down leaning up against the terminal at the Toronto Star office at number 1 Yonge Street. So chances are I was underpaid. And for the time that I had to be around the set, and I'm trying to think of when that was in terms of how old was I. I think I had not reached 18 yet, so I was probably 17, which meant, like, if I was an actor or an extra or other such things, there would have been, child labor laws and things and stuff. And so was it all, sort of done as it would be today? No, probably not. But it was fun. It was. I don't know what they paid the other fellow. No clue. But certainly, I was much more pivotal to their show than he. Let us see. Were all the images shown in the movie generated by the Commodore 64 and the PET CBM computers shown in the movie? Or were some created on other computers or faked through other means? Well, as far as I know, everything was done on the PET or the 64, and other things that were like in the corner of the doctor's office and other things, were what they were. And I don't know, like in the doctor's office, I know there was stuff on the screen. I don't know what that was. I don't know if we zoomed in, we could see that was. I'm not sure how that was created, or if it was just something. I mean, who knows? They could have taped a black thing over that looked like something. I don't know. I don't know. I know everything I did was as it was. I know everything that was on the Commodore 64. They just filmed the screen, and I don't think we had to do a whole lot of visual trickery with any of that. I don't think so. Uh-oh, what's happened here? This thing has, my phone has changed. Why is this doing this? Did I click on something? Oh, okay. My phone is doing silly things. Just a moment. I have to not reset, but just go in. Sometimes it just kind of loses itself. There we go. Maybe the most interesting or complicated displays in the Commodore 64 program that appears to monitor the nuclear power plant. Yes. Well, you know what? I didn't do the stuff that did the power plant thing. So I don't know exactly what was involved. I'm sure I could have done something with it, with all the colors and things and stuff, and basically like little bar charts and things. Not to diminish what Chris did, but he'd already done. That's the stuff he'd managed to do in a year, which I'm sure was helpful and good and somewhat convincing. And I did the rest. So I was. Let me look at that again. Anyway, that would have been. I mean, I could have done something similar. Maybe it, like it had lines, and then they went into the red, and then it had the little thing emergency and stuff. Anyway, to me, I haven't ever tried to recreate that, but I'm sure I could, and I'm sure others could, um, because of course the Commodore 64 had colors, and of course in a lot of cases people think, oh, got to make bar graphs. So basically, it was little bar graphs and things. And anyway, it was not my thing. And then it says, and of course, any other memories you have. Well, um, yeah, any other memories? Yeah, I have lots of memories of that. Like my brother was an extra in it. Unfortunately, he decided to sit along the window, and that really hardly ever got shown. Although I did see in one of the scenes when Huntley is kind of going around and then coming up to Jessica at her terminal. I think that might have been when he invited her up to the front. Um, I could kind of see my brother way off in the corner, and as they're all leaving the classroom in that scene, when Huntley wants to talk to Hacker and Jessica, my brother walks through. I think that's really the only time you can see him of significance. Anyway, there are many, 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 many memories of this, which I will slowly be getting into, and I basically now have chopped the movie into separate scenes, and some scenes I know a lot about because I was there, and some scenes I don't know much about because I wasn't there, because that's the way it is in the movie thing, is that if you're needed and you're there, if you're needed to be there, you're there. If you're not, then you're not. That's why in some shows there's actually, actors who are in the same movie who never actually meet, never talk, maybe at the after party or something, but they're in the same production and they are never on set together. And like I was on a show years ago called Copper, and there was kind of the uptown and the downtown, and there were people definitely in the uptown scenes that were there when they were filming them, but they were not there for the down. And I was just one of the background people, extras, and we certainly got to know each other quite well. I spent a lot of evenings and weekends there. Um, and some of the actors and stuff we would get to know too. But the of the main actors, I'm sure there were some who, the show was on for a couple of years. I was only on for the second season. Who never started. So anyway, there are scenes. Like I was never at the Pickering plant when they did the stuff. I wasn't at um, the doctor's office. I wasn't in the computer room where there was the fellow who was trying to figure out where is this coming from, what's going on. So there's some locations that I just don't know. But I think I was around more so than other people might be, because many times I was invited to go watch the rushes. And I was like, oh, this is cool. And the rushes were basically, they would do a quick, and remember, this was film. They would develop things, and then the very next day or so, uh, they could get a look at them and see, okay, is this okay, or do you need to do this again? Because, of course, while you're in a location, it's really easy to do it again if something is not as it should be. So, anyway, there was another fellow who asked me a bunch of questions. I don't have them right here, but I will be filming more things. And um, I did do one exploratory video of the very opening scene, and I'm pretty pleased with it, but I think I'm going to, when I do the final thing of how things were, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to show the scene, and then you'll see me talking about the things I remember about the scene, and then we'll see the scene again. But then I think, and I haven't done this yet, I think then we'll have that flow into the next scene, and then I'll come on and talk about that, and then after I've talked about it, we'll probably then go into the second scene, and then the third scene attached to the second scene, so you can see the flow of things. But still, nothing is in stone. I'll just look at each thing and see how it seems to make sense. And really, if there are things that I don't have a whole lot to say about because I wasn't there, then I don't need to say a whole lot about it. I don't. So, Robin Harbron. Now my phone is acting up. I will write to you. I will let you know that I have done this part. I told them I was working on an interesting backdrop. That's why I finally said, you know what, I got to get all the pets together. So there's 30, and then of course, ooh, look, there's my pet t-shirt from Computers, the House of Computers, Commodore phone, 2 Commodore hockey jerseys, a bag from the world of Commodore, and way up in the top corner, that's the oldest pet I have. And of course, just there, right there, that's an 8296, which is probably the newest pet that I have. But anyway, in the room here with me, although you can't see them from this angle, but I'll be filming from different angles, there are 30 different variations on the Commodore PET and other accessories. But I have more of the disk drives than, like, I only have a couple in here. And there's an 8010 modem, and there's other stuff. So we'll see. I am going to do the family portrait soon. So I think that's it for now. I'm going to look at the other questions from the other person who wrote to me about this stuff and get to recording. And then I will go through scene by scene by scene and tell you what I remember about those magical days, the late nights, and other moments from the filming of Hide and Seek in 1983. So, thanks for coming. Stay tuned. And I would encourage any and all of you to look for the movie on YouTube and watch it in its entirety at some point. Because what I'm going to do is kind of going to pick it apart scene by scene by scene because there are so many stories, so many memories, so many thoughts. So, thanks for coming. We will meet again in this long series of recollections and witticisms. Bye for now.
To see how few personnel are required to operate the reactors here at this nuclear plant. That's because, like our traffic lights and telephone system, the entire installation is run by one of the most sophisticated computers available.
Take a look at the temperature gradients on 6, will you? It looks a little hot.
This is one of your screw-around calibration loops, Jerry.
Damn. Computer isn't responding. I can't get criticality below 1.14.
Crash it, Jerry. Insert the shutdown rods.
Come on, respond, you bastard!